All right. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our newest podcast.
Yes.
I'm with Jill Choi, the Director of HIM at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and I am Kristi Fahy, an account executive representing Dolby. And today we are going to be talking about how emotional intelligence and empathy is essential for the workplace.
No doubt about it. Essential.
Yes. So, before we get started, I thought it would be good to just define emotional intelligence, and then we're going to pass it over to Jill to kind of share her words of wisdom. So, according to the Institute for Health and Human Potential, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions and recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others.
So true.
So Jill, let me ask your input on emotional intelligence and why you think it's so important.
Think about your workplace. You will come in contact with so many different people. Do you ever have someone that rubs you the wrong way? I think we all do, right? You have to be effective in the workplace, you have to know how to manage your emotions, how to manage your reactions to somebody. Or if there's someone that constantly is pushing your buttons, you have to know how to manage yourself, regulate yourself, so you don't go off or you don't say something that you're going to regret. I think it's just everybody, not just managers, but your frontline employees, everyone, the whole general public needs to know how to manage their emotions and tap into the emotions of other people.
Yes, especially post-pandemic. I mean, everybody's gone through their own things this last year, last 2 years, however many years it's been. So you don't know what they've been dealing with on the inside all of this time. So sometimes your words really affect them, even though you might not think so. So one of the things, I know Jill did a little bit of research on what really emotional intelligence requires. So Jill, talk about some of the different elements that emotional intelligence is made up of.
So I think one of the first things is you being self-aware of you. How does your past or different things that have happened to you in life, how does that affect you? And how does that make you show up at work? You know, if you know you have a problem with XYZ, then at least you're going to be aware of it if you have a trigger of some sort. Also, the ability to self-manage yourself. Like if that person's pushing your buttons, are you taking some deep breaths? Okay, I'm not going to react. I'm not going to react. And then, I don't know about you, Kristi, but there's always someone in a group that talks and talks and talks and talks and has no awareness of the rest of the people in the room. We call that social awareness. Being able to read people's nonverbals. Are they bored? Are they checked out? That is critical. You have to know what others are feeling and thinking. And then also managing relationships. Do you have the skills to listen and to reflect and to get along? I mean, all of those things work together.
Yeah, I mean, to everything that you just said, I personally have been really tuning into my personal triggers. And I realize whenever I'm starting to get a little bit defensive, I start to think, okay, that is a trigger of mine. So why is that a trigger? And why am I reacting the way that I am? And is there a time for me to be able to take a step back and really assess why I feel that way? And instead of just, like Jill said, bursting out into anger or being defensive, maybe that extra minute that I took to just think about it is going to allow me to regulate my emotions and not just like blow up on somebody, right? So if you can imagine, not doing that in the workplace is probably going to maybe alleviate some conflicts or I don't know, just a lot of different things. So tell me some of the things that you apply at Nationwide Children's with your team.
Well, I mean, I think the first and foremost, I need to regulate myself. I need to use these things that I talked about. So I have to understand as a manager, I'm never going to make everybody happy. It still bugs me, but you know, I have to know that that is one of the limitations. That's one of the realities of being a manager. And I have to be okay with that. And then I also, let's say there are employees that are having a conflict and they don't want to talk to each other. Guess what, folks? That's emotional intelligence at work, or not at work, right? You have to have the guts to go and talk to someone. Now, you may, when you talk about self-awareness, you may be like, oh my God, every time I brought something up as a child, I would be scolded or punished. So you're operating maybe with that, like I'm not allowed to talk, I'm not allowed to bring stuff up. And as a manager, I have no idea you're dealing with that, right? The coworker has no idea you're dealing with that. So that's why you want to learn about, like, where am I coming from when someone triggers me? It's not about that person, it's about you, right? So, teaching people to come to the table, that you can have a discussion about how strong your wallflower is. And oh my gosh, I'm sneezing all the time, your wallflower's too strong, or your perfume's too strong. But people are scared to death to talk about it.
Right. It's really interesting that you say that, because one of the things that, I always think about is, like, how am I impacting somebody, right? So, like, I don't know, like, everything that I'm doing to somebody else, like when I'm angry about a trigger or I'm defensive, that is because, like Jill said, this is something that's like deep down in our souls and it just comes out. We don't even know about it, right?
Right.
So that's where, like, when somebody's really kind of mean to me or they're angry at me or whatever it might be, I have to take a step back and realize that that is also what they're dealing with. It's their internal trigger.
Right.
And it's more of a reflection of them, not so much me. So that kind of helps me not take it so personally.
Yes.
And also take that step back to not be defensive back, because that becomes an argument or conflict or whatever. So
Right.
it sounds like there's some good stuff to have by having emotional intelligence. So what would you tell for leaders? What is your advice for leaders when managing teams?
Well, my advice would be for both managers and employees. Take a test. There are many online tests. In fact, there is, and we'll link it.
Yeah,
we'll link
absolutely.
it for you. But there are a couple quizzes to test your emotional intelligence, and it will ask you things like, if I get defensive when criticized, and you answer like how you react to that. And there are a whole bunch of questions like that. That will give you an assessment of where you're strong and where you need to do some work. And I would really recommend that for anybody. Your husbands, your girlfriends, your brother, your coworkers. Everyone would benefit.
You know what's so funny that you say that too, because one of the things I wanted to ask you was, the thing is work-life balance is a really big thing these days, right? We all know that mental health matters in the work life, in the in your just daily life, all that good stuff. So I think it's really important that you have emotional intelligence, not just at work, but also at home, because guess what? Typically, the two lives spill over into each other. So if you're upset at work and you had a terrible day and you go home and you just yell at your husband or your wife or your kids, then it affects your personal life, and vice versa. If you get in an argument with your children right before work and you're just steaming, and you go to work and you're just yelling at everyone, it's a spillover. So it's important that you practice emotional intelligence with your families, with your friends, with random people you meet at the grocery store, because you do not know how you're impacting your day and their day. So
absolutely. And think about how many times you have had some sort of argument, or we have this at work. Somebody walks by and they say hi and the person's looking down. So the person who didn't get the greeting is thinking, what did I do? What did I do? Is she mad at me? And then let's say you take that home and then you hang on to that. All you had to do was say, Kristi, when I passed you in the hall, you didn't do your normal greeting. Is everything okay? And then maybe she'll tell me something that, completely, puts me at ease, that it wasn't my fault.
Right.
But there are so many people in our lives that do that, that carry this stuff. when they don't have to. So, I mean, hands down, this skill can help in all facets of your life.
And just being able to communicate, like you said, like you would have never known that that person was struggling that day just because of, them keeping their heads down. But all it takes is a simple conversation, communication, express why you feel that way. And then maybe they can, really put themselves into your shoes and start to understand, even if they don't agree. So that's something to keep in mind. But that is, I think we've covered a lot of helpful information. I think it's important, like you mentioned earlier, Jill, even if you're an employee who's struggling, you can take the test too, or you can have that tough conversation with your manager to really alleviate any conflict. And hopefully you'll start to see things really, falling into a better, more positive place.
Yeah.
So Jill, any last thoughts before we wrap up this great podcast?
Guys, we have too much to deal with. We don't need to deal with this too, right? This is something that we can control and we can get educated on and at least, have that one part of our lives under control, right? So I would encourage everybody to try out the tests that we link below.
Absolutely. And just one last thought from me is, like I mentioned earlier, we all went through this pandemic together. So I think that if anything, it's really shed light on how we need to be kinder to everybody.
Yes.
And I hope that you can really start to tune into your emotions, your triggers, things that you're reacting to or maybe not reacting to, and make sure to give grace to everybody that you encounter.